Hello and welcome to FinextraTV. My name is Alex Lippic. You join us at UK Fintech Week at the IFGS 2024 in London, and I'm delighted to be joined by Philip Belamant, the CFO and CEO of Zilch. It's great to have you here with us, Philip.
Very good to be here.
Thank you very much. So I guess if we just start off on a positive note, so the UK has successfully secured its place as a centre for global fintech. I wondered what your thoughts are on how that has happened, and also, what do you think have been the main contributions from the UK in the last 10 years or so?
So if you really look at what's going on, right, the UK is a fantastic and phenomenal place to start, found and build a business, particularly in tech and fintech. So if you look at the amount of money raised just last year, it just tipped around $5 billion flowed into the UK, into fintech. All right, that, just to put some perspective on that, is the second largest only to the US, and it's more than all of Europe combined. All right, so let's just paint the real picture here. Okay. That's what's going on. And the reason for that is there's some fantastic policy that's been put in place to drive the innovation and startup world. So you've got EIS, SEIS, Entrepreneurs Relief, all of these things attracted people to the UK, if you weren't already here, to certainly come and build a business here and then hire people here, drive the economy here. That's fantastic. What happens after that is you get to 100 million plus revenue, you become a big scale up type business, and that's where things start to change a little bit.
Right.
And again, this is driven by policy. So you start to look at things like R&D. How does this impact your business at scale? And is there just one broad brush applied? You start to look at things like VAT. What is included and what is excluded? What can you claim back and what can you not claim back? All of this really matters, but at scale. It doesn't matter so much initially. And so that's really where we start to focus on things and say, is it exactly the right way, the right configuration of things to drive companies to build scale and stay here? Or do companies start to get to scale and go, well, I need to start considering all of these policies, and at the same time, how do I list the company? Does it look good for us in the UK, or do I need to do that somewhere else? And that really is how we think about the landscape today.
So in March, Innovate Finance launched the Unicorn Council for UK Fintech, which you yourself sit on, Philip. What need has UCFT been responding to in general?
So the Unicorn Council is really a collection of companies in the United Kingdom, in fintech, that represent today, and this council is not very old, about a month in, it represents already 50 billion in private companies, all right, that have joined the council. And the whole concept and idea came from a discussion we actually had walking out of Treasury. We had a brilliant conversation. I have to say, policymakers are really leaning into and want to listen to business. But we had a fantastic discussion around 2 or 3 topics. And the thinking was, how many of these conversations are actually happening across how many firms at any given time? The combinatorics of all of these things, X times Y times Z, gets you to a huge number of combinations of discussions and policies and ideas. How do you refine that into one succinct voice from the industry and deliver it directly to Downing Street and policymakers and say, these are the things that the industry agrees will transform the way they think about building their business into the future. That is the purpose of UC. And so the idea was, let's try and pull that together, but obviously we're running our own business, we're really busy every day. Who should we go to and work with us on this? We were already members of Innovate Finance. We were very close with Janine. And so we called up Janine and said, look, this is something really that needs to be done, and it needs to be driven by people who have been in this market driving policy and change for more than 10 years. We're here today celebrating Innovate Finance's Global Summit, their 10 year. And so we said, this squarely fits in the remit of what you're all up to, and she's just so passionate about this. And so they've taken this by the horns, proverbially, and are driving this into the market. And so we're really excited and thrilled to have Janine driving the Unicorn Council initiative from Innovate Finance. And as you mentioned, we co-founded and are now sitting as a co-chair. But this is the objective and this is what we're trying to achieve. And really, we want to see the scoreboard. Let's go and look at how many companies are getting to £1 billion plus in valuation. and are not going and listing that business overseas, continuing to grow and thrive here in the UK and drive the economy of the UK. This is really what our eyes are focused on.
Yeah, so you mentioned growth, looking into the future. So as we do look into the future as best we can, how can we prioritise, or how should UK fintech growth be prioritised moving forward in the next 10 years, for example, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, we just had a fantastic talk with, the EST. We are excited to have such an amount of interaction with policymakers and government. And what everyone fundamentally understands is that fintech and technology, so if you look at the UK today, technology is now, the third largest market in the world, just behind the US and China. It's unreal, it's unbelievable to see that. And so when we sat down with EST, I think people understand that you have to get this sector right. If we really want the UK to thrive, we must get this right. This is where the most phenomenal growth is coming from, and this is going to be so important into the future when you look at the amount of economic activity it can deliver, the number of jobs it creates, and this is high-paying jobs, right? And of course the amount of tax that'll generate and so on and so forth. And so I think it's not lost on anybody how important it is to get this right. And if the aspiration is to become the next Silicon Valley, the real question that we were faced with today in this morning's Unicorn Council meeting with the EST is, do we want to do this okay? Do we want to really just go and say, are we pleased creating billion-pound companies, £5 billion companies? Or do we want to create 10, 20, 100 billion-pound businesses here in the United Kingdom? That is, of course, our aspiration, and that's what we should focus on.
Well, Philip, thank you very much. All really interesting, positive insights as well. As you can probably hear, the event's getting louder as we speak, so I'll let you get back to it. I know you've got to talk a little bit later, but thank you very much for your time and for sharing all your insights with us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Philip.